that everybody set by basically using these what are previously kind of consumer technologies, Zigbee, Thread, Bluetooth, those types, right? We started from the ground up, building towards an industrial mesh network, with that being the end goal of what we were building. Along with that, because most of these solutions run on battery power, we targeted how do we build all of this to run on super low, small batteries and be super efficient. So, 25 microamps, we can do a fully battery operated network per node. And that enables those thin tag sizes that John was just showing. And you can roll out deployments that can last years on batteries. You can also power them, and they take a negligible amount of power off of your infrastructure. And we can do communication in all different ways. Uplink, downlink, multicast, broadcast, and node-to-node messages are all supported. So that's kind of our fundamental thesis of what we're doing. Make these massive networks that enable it to be run on commodity hardware, but that is very friendly to the industrial environment. So I'll go into a little bit about how that works. So when we go for these large scale and high density pieces, that decentralized feature I talked about is the key. So because any device can be a router, that means these nodes automatically form chains that run up to the gateway. And they automatically pick their role based on what's around them from a noise and interference perspective and the nodes, and pick a best route path back to those gateways. And this role can be dynamically changed. And this is excellent when you look at global logistics and logistics inside of buildings, because some of these devices are moving on a regular basis, right? And that means that these nodes need to be able to connect to different routers and get that route back to the gateway quickly and simultaneously as they move. The other thing we do that's quite different than kind of what everybody else is doing in the market is we look at frequency, time, and power in a three-dimensional space and how they interact with each other. So you kind of look at all the traditional networks. They use one channel. They almost all use a single power level, and they just time slice. Or they all operate at the same time and use the same power, but they frequency slice things, right? So we're actually taking advantage of all of this at once. So we grid up how we talk on the network, where we have these what look like clusters of devices. So you can see these circles here. This yellow one would be this frequency or this communication set here. The orange one would be yet another, and the green one would be yet another. And these routers would end up talking, like this router would actually be talking on 3, because it passes messages from the green ones through it to the yellow one. So these devices are keeping track of multiple time slots where they can talk and are operating on different frequencies as available in their area, and they only use the appropriate amount of power. We do all this at very short on-air times, and this minimizes impact to other devices in the area. We're going to 1 megabit per second operating rate, and we have about 128-bit packet that we're sending with a small preamble in the front of it as well.
So that's significantly more than LoRaWAN, right? The 10K for LoRaWAN.
Yes, in terms of the actual bandwidth, we are a little bit wider than LoRaWAN, but the time on air is significantly shorter than LoRaWAN. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Does that impact? I mean, obviously, what you're describing is a peer-to-peer sensor network, right? That everybody, that all sensors participate in. I'm just wondering, like, what's the drawback of that? Is it a battery system? Because you had mentioned, I think, that the battery life can be years in some of these devices.
Yeah, the drawback on that, there honestly aren't terribly many compared to some of the LoRaWAN pieces there. I would say that the main issues we see are the long range aspects. We don't take advantage of super long range because we have a mesh, right? And so that requires some level of density for the system to work. and to have multiple reliable routes. So that is probably the main drawback of using Wirepas over LoRa. Is if you need a sparse network but long range, LoRa is a good fit. If you have lots of people congregating in areas, LoRa quickly gets congested, but Wirepas load distributes all of that and operates in a peer-to-peer meshing environment for that. So that's kind of, when we're looking at this type of application where we're trying to track kind of groups of people coming together and groups of equipment and supplies coming together and figuring out where they are, we usually find that you get these pockets of density that really benefit from having a mesh network. Does that make sense?
Yeah. It's almost, to use the Wi-Fi analogy, it's almost like 5 gigahertz or Wi-Fi 6 versus 2.4, right, in terms of the range and the way that it advertises itself, understanding they're all participating in a mesh network. You need that increased density is what I'm saying from an access point perspective.
Correct.
Yeah.
You do need, and the nice thing with this is these routers that you see here, they're the same low-cost hardware. They're just running a different configuration than these nodes. So you're not adding any cost by adding these routers. It's just a different software configuration that automatically happens. Yep.
Are they all self-powered, or is it an outlet thing, or is it just battery, or how do you guys go? I mean, that's a big network, right? 700,000 nodes in Oslo.
Yeah. That 700,000 nodes is mostly powered because those are power meters, right?
Okay.
But if you look at what we're doing in the pallet tracking world, for instance, which we're doing with Terry and his guys and Nathan and CJ, that is almost entirely battery operated. There's a few of those that go on trucks, and the stuff that gets put in the ceilings to track, those are powered. So CJ and Nathan have a great solution that just plugs into a lighting fixture basically and steals power off that. That's super low cost and uses Wirepas, and that creates your backbone. But then you can have battery operated devices scattered throughout the environment that can support that and talk into that same network.
Have you guys ever considered opting it out as an open source peer-to-peer sensor network outside of the four walls of a location? Or
so we are
like
actually in the process of doing. We basically just last year pushed this out as a global standard. So that it's still kind of all coming together, but we've been taking a lot more steps over the last 2 years to basically open up Wirepas. And a lot of all our APIs are now public on GitHub, and we're really making it kind of easy for people to get in and use the solutions here.
So what would the revenue model, Ben, be for Wirepas? Is it around the development of the sensors and the end state peripherals, or is it, I mean, if you're open sourcing the technology, is that where you see the benefit?
We have IPR around this. We have a license to the stack that runs on the hardware. So like Nathan and CJ's products or Terry's products, they pay us, or one of the partners pays us when they manufacture the product, and then you're done. Well, you're paid to Wirepas. So it's really just a very simple, no recurring fees associated with that type of stuff from the Wirepas perspective. Yep.
Yeah, and maybe I can just explain the sensors, right? I've got a few of them here, just to, John showed you the badge, right? So to get around, one, we want to increase the precision of the location tracking, right? So what we've done is develop this very low cost. This goes up in a 277 light circuit above the, so this can go into every light or in a junction box. You just plug it in and it sits there, it'll last for, however long, 5, 10, 15, 20 years.
You wouldn't move it closer to the camera, Nathan, so we could see it, would you?
Oh, yeah. Maybe could you stop sharing, Ben, for a sec there, and we can see it. Yeah, so it's just this thing goes into the side of a junction box in the ceiling. So, I mean, we've got it down. Guys in a lift can pound these things out in less than 15 minutes, and they're putting them up. They put the network up. Again, this is very cost effective. We also have one that can control the lights too, because as LED is happening, you can just send this to the lighting manufacturer. It extends the mesh as well. But once you have these in, so again, it's like, well, I don't want to replace batteries for my anchor network, right? So we decided to say, well, let's get a powered solution. This is UL listed. We're making these and selling these already. And then it becomes, hey, I want to track people with the badge, right? Your little badge goes on here, or we can put sensors. These actually get drilled into the pallet, which Terry and the gang there have developed this from the ground up. Again, the Wirepas enabled sensors. This one just, screws onto anything. So the form factor is really, very easy to change.
Awesome.
Nathan?
Yeah.
I might want to just add on the pallet tracker sensor that you gave there. That's a single AA battery size lithium battery of 8-year battery life on that sensor.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then this is, we've got different form factors where you can just, screw this or magnet it to if you want to quickly set up a network. So we're working with John to come in and provide temporary, solution. And then boom, it goes into the temporary lights, and then it goes into the overall infrastructure. And as this emerges, then, you can put this on, or let's say this one, on every steel rack, for instance, that you use to send to your supplier and back. And so we can tie into your warehouse management. Again, we're trying to understand exactly, we're tracking people.
Use cases.
But you can track things as well as you get a little further down the path.
So it's interesting you say that, Nathan. Can you show us that one before you put it down again? Just the sensor for the rail or the rack. We're very much in the things business, and what I mean by that is we absolutely don't want to track people, right? So even when we were doing the COVID testing, I was telling John that there was some sensitivity with some of the early staff that obviously they didn't want to be tracked, right? So what we were doing was we were tracking interactions over LoRa. We weren't actually tracking. We were tracking interactions over LoRa. We weren't tracking location data, and we had to prove that nearly. So, having the ability, this is right up our alleyway in terms of what you're suggesting from a device or a pallet tracking or some of the other elements. And they're pretty clever form factors you've done there.
Yeah, we've got this from deploying to multiple places, and we're like, man, we don't want to go back and be replacing these batteries every 18 months, right? Depending on the volume of products that are under there, it's like, we got to put infrastructure in, and we're going to start tracking. So a lot of, we work with a lot of industrial warehouses, and they want to be able to put these things in and future-proof to go, well, let's start tracking the fork trucks, then the people, now the inventory, and how are we going to do that? We're going to embed it in the pallets and do all that, or embed it, in all of your reusable racks that come from your suppliers. It'd be very simple to do, but you're future-proofed if you put it in once. So,
yeah. John, that's exactly what Philips Hue did for commercializing smart light bulbs, right? They bought up the IP and developed some of it in-house themselves, and now it's $25 for an LED that's IoT compatible. Whereas you can go to Alibaba or any of the Chinese manufacturers and pick them up for $1 or $2,
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I would expect Siemens to absolutely do that. I know I would.
Yeah, so these are sub $30. This one, a typical sensor, I call it a dumb sensor that controls your LED lights. It just goes on and off. Yeah. Retail on those are, the regular sensor is $35. So we're coming in at the same price for this.
Motion sensor, is it? Like a PIR?
PIR, so that the light, again, we're going in the lighting because we have a circuit there. And what happens is that, the lights shut off when you're not in that area. So it has full control to the LED driver. It has daylighting as well to say, hey, if it's light. So it does that itself. So this is if you want to add infrastructure, we send these directly to the lighting manufacturer, get them installed before if you're replacing lights, for instance. So we're even getting back into the supply base such that you don't even see the cost of this. It's just included when you order your light fixtures. But for existing where you've already replaced LED, I don't know what adoption you have in terms of LEDs. This one here, same thing. It just extends the mesh if you already have lighting controls. Yeah, so I mean, it depends on the density of the lights, right? So this builds your framework for your RTLS. So the farther apart you are, the less precise you are. So Ben can probably talk chapter and verse on this, but
I generally recommend around 10 meters.
10 meters. So almost every light, we can do like if you've got rows of racks, I don't know, we do a lot of industrial warehouses. So I think it'd be different, of course, in your assembly plants, it's kind of a different animal, because we would do it like one per cell or something, right? Where the racks are coming in, they're picking them off. We can see those specific products, and let's say windshields or something like that.
Just to give you the size, just to give you a feel for the scale, Nathan, like if you look at an Arlington assembly, that's like 6 million square feet, right? Now, there's plenty, don't get me wrong, right? There's plenty of lighting, there's plenty of opportunity for the drop down, but I like the idea of coupling with the BMS or the building system, right? In terms of managing that for the antenna and spreading this peer-to-peer network out. That's really clever.
Yeah, because then it just goes in and you can track it. Again, whatever you put, that's where we try to keep this as low cost as we can. Just slam it into a junction box wherever you can find it. And then you put the badge on the person, or, I mean, this is just a plastic enclosure. You put a small battery and put it on the reusable racking, right? So now you know where everything is. And we're even talking to another company where they're basically getting rid of their ability to barcode things, because we'll know if it's there, right? So it takes across. We're in the truck, so the Terry and the gang there, they've developed a gateway that goes in the truck, in the pallet. So now we're affecting basically the logistics side of things to eliminate the need to scan or barcode something when it comes in the factory. So to us, that's really the big efficiency gain when we move into product.
Absolutely. The one thing I was going to ask is, guys, obviously from at a plant perspective, we're trying to reclaim a lot of our wireless spectrum, whether that's, WireNet, LoRa, BLE, Wi-Fi, cellular, you name it, we have it. I mean, what frequency does this operate at?
Yeah, so today everything's on 2.4, but we do some very clever things with the network in order to share that spectrum quite well. We are also.
Do you channelize, Ben? How do you handle it?
Yes. So let me show you real quick. Can you see my screen again?
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, so we're doing. Just want to go to the next slide because it's probably easiest. So we take advantage of 40 different channels across the 2.4 gigahertz space. And what we do is before every time that these clusters, remember that group of nodes that talks to each other on a particular channel, they go out and scan what's going on in their local environment. And they will pick channels that are available for them to operate on. So for instance, it'll look out and say, okay, you're using Wi-Fi channel 1 and 6, so it will decide it can use any of these channels down here in green. And then if you've got a different area that's of your plant that's running on 12 and 4 or whatever, it'll carve out the channels it can use, and it'll pick the one with the lowest noise to do that. And so what happens is when you get these black nodes, are basically your anchor nodes, as you pass messages down, it will actually change channels, the network will, as it passes that data towards the gateway to avoid all the other 2.4 gigahertz stuff you have operating in your facility. So even if you've deployed out an entire Wi-Fi network, you're putting that out in like a cellular grid effectively on the channel spread typically. So this will pass messages through that on channels that the Wi-Fi isn't using in that area. And that's extremely unique. Like Bluetooth uses just 3 channels all the time, and it broadcasts every message on all 3 channels every time it sends anything. So this is not only an RF mess, but also limits your density of how many radios you can have out there, right? And you look at 802.15.4 or LoRa, they pick a single channel that the entire network runs on. And so you're bound to have interference somewhere in your building if you have multiple other radios operating.
Yeah. No. So have we. I mean, Ben, is it dynamic, or you set it up once on 4 and 12 and it just automatically sits there?
Dynamic. Yeah. So okay. The nodes are constantly going out and reanalyzing what's going on around them, and they change their channel. So let me pop up a different presentation real quick and just show you a picture of and if you watch I sent out a video. At the end of that video, I actually show a live demo of them changing channels. But you can see it here. So this is one of our demo networks, and these different colors are different nodes, right? So the colors represent a different node, and then the y-axis is frequency, and the x-axis is time. So you can see that these nodes move around on a regular basis, and this is over a week, for instance, is what this time scale is here. So they're finding other 2.4 gigahertz interference, and they're actively changing channels to avoid that dynamically to protect both our network, to make sure we aren't getting stomped on by Wi-Fi or somebody else, and to protect the Wi-Fi side. So this is really where we've put a lot of our time and focus into Wirepas.
Yeah. One of the things that we really liked about Wirepas and why we went all in on it is the self-organizing and self-healing aspects of it, right? So it's constantly, because it's not blowing out this signal, it's constantly hopping to talk to its next neighbor. So if you can imagine, if I to sit there and talk to a gateway and I'm a star topology, I'm blowing it out, or I can just lean next to my next neighbor and just whisper, and I found that frequency to whisper to my neighbor. Well, now I can control power, and then the thing is this reorg, it looks, you can change how often you want it to go. Let's take a look and figure out, now we're on a new frequency. If I can't get through, it changes. So it's really sophisticated on this, the back end, and it's just happening on a battery operated sensor that's on a pallet. It's really cool when you think about the self-healing aspects. If you drop out, again, let's say I drop out, the light goes out, right? I lose one of the anchor points. It just talks a little louder to get around to the next one, or now I'm going to talk to my neighbor and it's going to get there. So standard mesh stuff, but it's really, it's superior that we've seen in any of these technologies.
Can you talk about the packet loss too?
Yeah, so like a Bluetooth packet loss, right? It's like 90% or something. It's just because it's just blowing it out there. Where, I don't know if you want to talk about specific packet loss.
Yeah. So we do acknowledge. What you'll find is we generally say 99.9% SLA end-to-end acknowledgement for all of our devices. So this node here will talk to this node here, which will send a very quick ACK back. If not, it'll retransmit, and then each node with a QoS level as well. The chain. So if it's too noisy, to prevent stomping on somebody unintentionally. So what that means, we can basically pass messages up and get individual acknowledgements back, and get a pretty high reliability that your message is going to get to the gateway without having to be, blindly flooded out into a mesh network, which is pretty much how everybody else is doing it.
Full of retransmits. Absolutely.
Yeah. Basically, there's no single points of failure because they'll automatically it'll automatically self-heal to this new route. Even if you drop entire gateway, the entire network will reorganize and find a new gateway and start passing that messaging up. And this is all seamless to you.
What's the convergence time when you introduce or drop a node? How long does it typically take?
It honestly depends. So say you drop the gateway. The gateway takes a bit more time than if you drop a single node, right? Because you've got to reorganize the whole system. But usually is kind of the longest we've seen. You can set that to be more aggressive as well in your settings. So if you want it to to reconverge faster, and that's with an all battery operated system as well. If you're using Nathan's anchors that are powered, it will be tens of seconds to reorganize that.
Mm-hmm. Right, and because there's a buffer, you typically won't lose any data packets.
Yeah, and that is actually what kind of triggers that to start happening. So the nodes will, particularly on battery power, they will be less aggressive at finding new routes until their buffers and RSSIs hit certain thresholds. Mm-hmm. And so this means that you're kind of waiting to see if your neighbor that you already knew about came back. And if he doesn't, by the time your buffer's getting to a point where, hey, I got to be worried, then it'll go find another route. Yeah. And so we've built some intelligence into that system to make sure that the nodes automatically kind of figure that out and don't lose data in that process.
So is it noticeable to a user when one of the participating user nodes drops out in the vicinity? Say in one of the blue vicinities there, you drop the central node. How much time do you lose visibility for? Is that the maximum uptime of 10 minutes?
No, this would be if you lost this node here that these other guys were connected to, and you're using Nathan's anchors that are wall powered, you're going to be just a few seconds to reestablish a link to a new neighbor.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Well, and one thing I want to say is, Terry and the team have done the software on this pallet sensor such that it store forwards. So we've done entire trips from California to Florida where you have 2 Wirepas mesh networks in different facilities. It leaves the one facility. We're doing a cold chain storage deal where it goes, it leaves the facility and automatically unconnects from that gateway and that network. It drives across the United States. It's tracking every 30 minutes what my time and temp is. And when it shows up in Florida, it sucks all that data in. So even if we lose this for like 3 days and it shows back up, it can suck all the data. I mean, again, this has an accelerometer, temperature, humidity on it, but I don't know how sophisticated you want to get on your pallet tracking and things like that. We can just, look at position or, accelerometer for movement or something. But that's the beauty in this is now we're building networks. Now, what we're doing next, or what we have done is put the gateway in the truck such that we're now bringing power back to the truck so we can tell if eggs crack, if, anything happens to the load, or this is awesome produce thing where we're tracking if it goes above temp, we got to throw out the chicken nuggets, Yeah. It's a little different than automotive steel part, I suppose.
Yeah, but a very good use case, right, for shipping and for movement of food, logistics and things like that. Where's the catch, guys? Where does it not do well? Because it sounds like too good to be true. I'm like, why haven't I heard about this before?
Well, put us to the test.
You know what? You're going to have to leave that with me. I think that's a really good question because I'm seriously interested. I don't know the rest of the team who are on here.
I'm wondering about the gateway is obviously proprietary. At what point does the data become available, or at what point do you make the jump out into the open source world, or make the data consumable by other platforms?
Oh, well, I can talk to that. Basically, we've set it up such that we have an open API on either side, really. So our software, we can take additional information on top of the Wirepas, but specifically for the sensors, we bring it in and can expose it to any downstream API. So if you want to put it into SAP or Oracle, push it anywhere downstream, we have basically filleted the data in such a way that you can pick up and subscribe to that specific stream. So it's available today for any downstream consumption.
So is that a gateway that sits? Is that a software gateway that sits right beside the antenna that you're deploying? The green, the blue nodes at the top of that mesh, or what way is it consumed? Does it have to traverse some sort of hybrid cloud or native cloud type system?
Well, so the actual geolocation rectification, if you want to call it, has to go through, the cruncher to figure out where things are. So that has to go to a cloud and basically rectify the geolocation. Then from there, we can pass it on. So there is the cloud piece that we need to be able to do that. It is not done locally at the gateway.
But Nate, you can run that on, it doesn't have to be on a public cloud or your cloud. You can run that on GM's hosting, right?
In-house. Correct. So that can be hosted in-house.
Correct.
And what does that infrastructure look like? Is it a couple of containers? Is it a few virtual machines, or is it a rack?
Yeah. So from the Wirepas side, for the actual engine that computes the location of tags, it's 2 Docker, and each set of Docker containers on a decently powerful machine can track 10 to 50,000 devices, and then you just scale those Docker containers, horizontally if you need more nodes, so you replicate.
Gotcha. Is there any latency requirement on the location of those containers? So why I'm asking, right? Could I put this into the enterprise data center and have it run in, Kubernetes or something else and have it automatically scale out? Or does it have to be in the same location if it's on-prem?
Oh, no.
It does not have to be in the same location. So everything goes over MQTT from the gateway to an MQTT broker, and then the Wirepas network or Wirepas positioning engine pulls it out of that MQTT broker.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And so if it's deployed in ADCP or MCM, then we don't pay per API call, right?
That'd be the hope, Rory. We'd be double paying.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we monitor this on a monthly basis. So it depends on how you want to architect the final solution. We have a full SaaS that we allow our customers. We build custom apps off of our API. So a local, for instance, an operations manager who's looking at the whole facility or someone specific to that line. We build custom applications that hang off of the SaaS, and so the actual geolocation is a piece of that, a building block on that, and so we can expose that downstream as well. So that's what some of our customers are doing. Not sure what you guys are thinking in terms of the end solution. We can also deliver this, Power BI, Tableau, you name it, in terms of your analytics platform to do these studies or whatever.
I mean, just so you know, right, we use MQTT today, we use OPC UA, we use a whole host of other things in our plants, right? So for every sensor, every device, every bit or byte we're consuming, we're monitoring. I mean, I think this is really an interesting use case. I'm just wondering, what would a typical enterprise bill look like for this, in terms of how do you monetize it? Understanding that you're licensing your device tech to your device manufacturers, and then they're purchased in. I get that. You're saying, look, it's an open API, the gateway is open. I'm just wondering, how do you monetize it as a company?
Yeah, so I can take that. I mean, you pay a per monthly SaaS fee for basically, we'll call it the IoT engine for us to do all these things. And then per sensor, because we have customers are not only doing it at their facility, then they have their entire distribution network or their previous supply chain. So if you can think about it like this gateway, this is a typical gateway. What happens is is that we just put this at the location of, for instance, your, let's say transmission supplier, right? So now we have to monitor that. So we have a per facility fee plus a per sensor fee to track and manage that. Now we can give them reports as well to say, hey, were you on time? Things like that. What was your temperature before you went? And so we're even tracking like how long the truck's dwell time at the supplier, how long the truck, so we can do all kinds of these other things. And so typically our customers want us to handle a lot of that specifically. So we charge them a per sensor fee per month to track the pallet or the person, and then give them the actual interface, the GUI.
No, I get you. I'm losing my excitement now by the second, Nathan, just so you know, right? I'm just curious to what would that translate to, in some of the plants that we have like millions of square feet and some of those other elements, right? It's going to be bloody expensive, I would imagine.
Yeah, we'd have to take a look at it. You'll be surprised. Once we get to, you're talking that volume. You're down in the cents, right, per sensor. So it's not like, hey, we're going to charge you $5 a month per employee. That's not it. It's going to be, very reasonable. But then, so the thing is, if you want to take on that front end and build that whole thing, our customers prefer to go, okay, these guys, bring it in, crack the IoT engine, and then fillet it out however we want it. So there's value there, right? Depending on where you sit in your organization. So to me, we'll be very cost competitive. So I wouldn't get too sleepy on us.
Okay, no, not at all. Not at all. I'm not suggesting that. I just, we obviously we take pride in developing our own software internally, and we're a big enough player for that, right? Fortune 10 company, and the net of it all is that we've been. It's not our first goat rodeo on IoT, right? We've had vibration analysis, we've had other things, and we've been stung in the past. So that's why you're getting that heightened sensitivity from me in terms of a facility fee, a sensor fee, a SaaS fee. Appreciate the transparency though.
Yeah, because a lot of our customers, definitely are not as sophisticated as you, and they just need us to come in and track it and provide an app, right? So we do that, but that costs money, right? Now you're talking about, hey, we're gonna host it on our own internal cloud, right? Okay, well, we don't have that cost, and so I think we can dig through it and figure out what makes the most sense. We're all for a win-win position here. So.
No, I get you, and thanks very much for that. Just one question for Ben. Obviously, the way the network is architected and the way it's pulled together, is that based on an open standard, or is Wirepas some proprietary setup right now in terms of the way that it's done? Are you guys rebranding some sort of open source, or is it all in-house tech that's codified and locked up from a PI perspective?
So a little bit of both. So we have some of the essential patents locked up on all of this. So it is, Wirepas tech. However, this last year we pushed basically our entire low-level piece. We didn't push some of the more secret sauce routing algorithms, but most of it we pushed to what's called the DECT 2020 standard, which is an Etsy-based standard. I can send you more information after this.
I'd love it, Ben. Thank you.
Yeah, and we'll actually, by the end of this year, Wirepas will be recognized as will be the only non-cellular 5G standard. So we're meeting the massive MMTC and real-time requirement of 5G. So we got approved by IMT 2020 process, and we're going through the final validation steps of that right now. So we'll be a 5G standard by the end of the year.
That's cool. Thanks very much. If you could send us the detail, that'd be brilliant.
Yeah, happy to.
Yeah, I have one other note here. So what's happening is, once you put all this network in, we can provide any additional sensor on this network very easily. So whether that's a temperature for a cooler, there's all kinds of, there's probably 10 different sensors that are coming. Wirepas is building an entire ecosystem. So if we find another sensor out there that you like or you find that's built, it's very easy just to put this on the network. That's really, again, I know we're talking about track and trace, but also, managing your asset, whether it be roof hatch or dock doors. Very simple, very low cost to track all these other things with this specific network. So.
Yeah, we have you can take a look at the Wirepas website. You'll see about over 200 different products that are integratable. And that's just the public ones.
Yeah.
Okay, will do. Thank you very much, guys.